As a still photographer, my background was in sort of documentary photography. It is my curiosity about the world. I think that that's really what draws me to documentary work, since it's about finding out about who we live with, the world we live in, and trying to draw connections. You know, I certainly you can make fictional films that do the same thing, but the richness of the documentary process allows you to go out and meet people, engage with people, and learn so much. I mean, it's this ongoing education experience. I actually really enjoy editing. I feel like that's where stories are constructed, and especially with documentary, structurally, it's a big piece of the work. So I like puzzles. So I think that, you know, editing is where a lot of that figuring out of the puzzle happens. Sharon and I, we're the co-directors, were approached by our third collaborator, whose name is Joanne Oppenheim, and she had basically annotated and compiled Stanley's diary, and she wanted to realize this as a film. She's not a filmmaker herself, she's a writer, and so she participated in the writing aspects of this project, but we were the ones to bring it to film, to realize it that way. I think it's, for me as a Japanese American who's grown up with this story, I mean, this is my story. My parents were both incarcerated. I've actually never made a film about the Japanese internment camp experience. I feel like there's, you know, numerous films that have really captured that experience well, and I was hesitant to sort of join that field of films if I didn't have something new to say. And I think what makes this film unique is that it's this teenager's story, and it's from a first-person perspective. I think that young people can really relate to it because it's in the present. You know, it's his experiences as he was experiencing them, his day-to-day trials and tribulations. And so we really tried to take that into consideration and emphasize that perspective. I think that also what makes this film really special is the charm of Stanley. His you know, his desire to be heard, and, you know, the loveliness of his drawings, and the sweetness of what, you know, what his observations were. I mean, it's not all sweet by any means, but that's the heart of this film. You know, I think any good film talks about things in different levels, there's different complexities to it. And in the big picture, this film is definitely about war and how this teenager is a victim of these circumstances. So it's a much bigger story about war in general. It's not specifically this World War II experience. But the richness, of course, is in the details. And so I also find it, you know, really interesting that he was just about the same age as Anne Frank. You know, and I think that was also what attracted Joanne to this story as well. She's not Japanese American, but being Jewish American, I think she was also attracted to the poignancy of that story. Of course, their experiences are completely different, but to be teenagers thrown into war and have to deal with it within those circumstances is a parallel story. So I think what also is unique about this film is that it isn't just the piece of incarceration. It links his experience being incarcerated with going to war in Europe, and, you know, and unfortunately being the victim of what happens.